Hello, everyone, and welcome to the month ahead. And this is a continuation. Yesterday, I started doing the month ahead and then ran out of time. And so today, I'm going to try and finish the whole month. And I'll start from where we are because you can watch the week ahead, which was my kind of introduction to the first 10 days of April. And then we'll go from there because this is a supercharged month, and even today, let's just start where we are. Um, some of the things I probably didn't mention in the week ahead yesterday. So today is the day of the Venus Neptune conjunction. And we also have the moon in Capricorn moving through a square to Mercury, which is recently stationed retrograde, right? Yesterday, Mercury turned retrograde, and that begins this 3-week cycle where Mercury is covering the ground where it's already been. And from an evolutionary astrology perspective, right, this is an acceleration. And I spoke about it recently as an acceleration of resolving conflict. And what is the conflict, right? It's the grief, it's the disillusionment, it's the breakdown of those unconscious desires that we have for manifestation as it relates to the dream or the vision that we have for our life, as it relates to the places where we have been wounded and hurt, and as it relates to our own vulnerability, right? And that vulnerability happens naturally when the life that we're living, what we consider reality, differs from the core desires of our heart or of our soul, right? On an existential level, this can be like we're living in a way that our soul feels like, this isn't the way that I should be living. And sometimes that begins as, a subtle feeling of I should change something in my life. I should change this, way I'm relating. I should change this way that I'm working. I should change this way that I'm living, right? Or sometimes it manifests as a desire for a real embodied experience of something, right? And that desire itself can motivate us towards something. And I think what we're desiring ultimately is the stability of nourishment and connection in relationship. And what is that stability? It's the stability of I can be myself, I can be in relationship, I can be authentic, I can creatively express, I can have the feelings and the desires and the needs for pleasure and touch and connection that I have, and I can be met in that, right? And we have the moon and Ceres, who are both squaring the nodes. That their square was yesterday, but it's still in effect. And Ceres' square to the nodes will be in effect for quite some time. Ceres, as an asteroid goddess here, is going to be basically transiting through Capricorn through the end of this year and moving these next couple of weeks in a square to the nodal axis. And the square in our work, it really is the crisis of consciousness that impels us towards a resolution of something that is within us. Something is from this Venus perspective, right? Because the south node is the resolution node in this case here. And from this emotional perspective, something that we haven't really gotten, some place where we haven't gotten our needs met, right? And in that lack of our needs being met, right, there's something that Mercury in this new phase to the north node is inviting us to reflect on, inviting us to really come to the clarity of the unconscious perceptions that have limited our ability to overcome, right? Or to resolve or to Part of what I was thinking about is just this idea that if we were conditioned from a young age to believe something about ourselves, whether it's believing an inherent lack of worthiness or believing that we will be abandoned or believing that we are not lovable, right? Whatever those core emotional, not good enough, not lovable, not wanted, not belonging, not safe, not supported, whatever that is in your life, right? The challenge of our perception is always where we're conditioned to believe the evidence of that in our experience and see it, right? And then, of course, whatever we see becomes reality, right? But often our eyes, our sight will trick us, we'll think, oh, I'm seeing something that's happening here. And really, that's not really what's happening, right? It's not that it's not what's happening. It's just that we have become really conditioned to feel a particular way. We've become driven by the unconscious desire to experience that wound again and again and again. Or we've been telling ourselves that story for so long that it has become entrained in our perception to see ourselves that way, right? And if Venus is doing anything in this particular time, I think she is renewing our sight, our clarity. If Ceres is doing anything, I think she's reconnecting us to our core. Where is the core place where we receive nourishment? Not you know, not the place that we're going towards, but the place that we're most familiar with, the state of being that we're most familiar with. Because a part of what the evolutionary intent is at this square, right? Here's Jeffrey Wolf Green says of this last quarter square. The soul, having learned all that it has to learn, right, about society and culture and becoming a socialized being, now experiences the process of repolarization. The crisis revolves around the tension between these souls' evolutionary accomplishments in the past and the drive toward the future. The intent is to begin a preliminary building of new foundations of awareness. The old patterns, beliefs, cultural truths, and societal values will no longer serve as the map through which the individual creates social and personal meaning, right? I talked a little bit about yesterday, the meaning, right? And the journey into that meaninglessness, the disillusion process. But what it really does is it is the journey of our coming into clear reality through the resolution of the past and actually through the experience of being able to feel and harness anger, disappointment, disillusionment, not for the purpose of self-punishment, victimization, but for the purpose of renewal, for the purpose of not necessarily, let's not skip ahead towards forgiveness, although that may be, bless you if you're actually able to access that level of true forgiveness of the past, which is where we let go of needing the past to be different. We let go of needing the person who we believe harmed us or hurt us, or the experience that failed to meet our desired reality of life. We let go of needing that to be something that it's not, and we open ourselves to the truth of being as we are. And in that, we become free of the entanglement of the past that did cause harm. We also become free of the pattern to, sort of like when you get a cut in your mouth and you rub your tongue over the cut and you feel the pain of like, oh, there's that spot in my mouth that's hurt. You know, we let go of the need to do that compulsively without the awareness that we're doing that. And maybe that starts with just this general awareness of, oh yeah, what I've been struggling with for so long, I'm ready to resolve. And then the question becomes like, how do we take a new stance on how do we have a connection to our current reality while being aware of the emotional desire to have a new experience, the physical limitations of our wounds, of our, you know, our present moment karmic reality, right? Which is what I was talking about yesterday, a little bit of that like buildup of all of the past is always moving with us in the present to some degree, even if in the present we are ultimately free of the past. We're still sort of working with the accumulation of all that dust under our feet, right? That becomes the ground that we're standing upon. And then if we want to move on to a new experience in our life, right? Which I think that this eclipse on the 8th is essentially, in a way, preparing us for a new experience of life by bringing back the very tastes of the medicine, that have caused so much hurt over the past. And it's such an interesting thing because, like, for example, in homeopathic remedy, the homeopathic remedy is essentially a little micro dose of that thing that ails us, right? By giving us and giving ourselves, our perceptions, our emotional experience, a little micro dose of that suffering that's been with us all this time over the course of several days, maybe, or several weeks or months, right? It builds up enough of an inflammatory response in our system that our system begins to heal itself. Our system begins to say, what is this thing that's been causing me a lot of pain? I'm ready to heal this. Our system begins to say, what is this pattern that I have engaged in this relationship or with this person or in the work that I do? Where am I consistently showing up and putting myself in the source of my pain, whether I'm belonging or like assigning that responsibility to someone outside of me, or whether I'm seeing the responsibility as something inside of me. Here, wherever I am, there I am. And that's where I get to begin my healing journey. And as this response to this inflammation builds in our system over these coming days, the healing process, the body's response or the emotional response, the soul's response to that inflammation begins to create the effect of healing, right? And as Venus enters the sign of Aries, she becomes ruled by that Mars in Pisces. I talked a little bit about that, like the movement of that Mars in Pisces being towards uncovering those unconscious desires and stepping into this real dance with the divine that is allowing us to become liberated from the past, right? And we're also working with the moon will move through Pisces, and then Venus will be moving towards a conjunction with Hygeia. Here's this deeper healing that comes from our own, power to be imbued with our power, right? And the being imbued with our power means that we're in the agency to create with our choice, right? Mars is about will, desire, direction, life force, energy, the I am presence, right? And do I have the power to be in my choice about what I see, in my choice about what I believe, in my choice about who I am, in my choice about how I respond to the past? One of the things I've been learning in this co-counseling training that I'm doing is like that the emotional discharge process is inevitably one path of removing the distress of the past, which the distress of the past can be early childhood trauma. It can be, it can be systems of oppression. It can be all these different, right? But irregardless of how the distress recording got initially placed in our life, what family member hurt us, what situation caused us pain, right? Chiron, the wounded healer, originally rejected by his family and then wounded by the world, right? So it doesn't really matter how that original distress recording was created. Our purpose in doing the process of coming to evolve through the emotional body, right? Our purpose is to come to see reality as it is and to recognize who we are, right? And this is my summary of it, right? And to settle for nothing less than everything that we desire, right? But what we're discharging is everything that's in the way of what we desire. Everything that's in the way right now might be Saturn, might be Mars, right? Might be Neptune. We're discharging what's in the way of our complete healing. And whether it's physical healing, emotional healing, financial healing, healing around our purpose, our core activation, our core calling, healing around relationship, I deeply can see, like, of course, there's that tendency towards feeling like the only way to heal relationship is often to separate from it, because we can't seem to separate ourselves from the pattern underlying or the perception underlying in relationship, which is ultimately bringing that wound, that distress to the surface. And it's not that I don't believe, I do believe, and I say this often, that I think we can heal things without having to leave anything, but that, and I'm never the one to say what is what is God's will, what is the right thing. And sometimes even in my own life, I lack the clarity of what that is for me. And in that lack of clarity, I have to do the one thing that I can do, which is take responsibility for myself and for my feelings, and find the places, the roots within myself where these patterns originated from, where these feelings of familiar starvation, emotionally, physically, the feeling of the hunger, the need for, right? There's a book that I'm thinking of right now called The Search for the Beloved, right? Which talks about the core, like, desire and from the perspective of the feminine for the masculine, for the counterpart, right? We can see Aries, Libra, these are two ends of a polarity. And whether you identify as, heteronormative, kind of cisgendered, like masculine, feminine polarity, or whether you're queer or other and identified, right? We all have this like desire for connection. We all, on some level, have the vulnerability of being in the world, in the womb, and then into the world, and desiring that reconnection with the safety of being held, the safety of being nourished and provided for from within. Like, there is no more vulnerable desire than the desire of life itself to return to source, right? And that is something I think we all experience on some level as an existential crisis that has like no name and can't really be resolved. And unfortunately, it's just a part of the human experience that we each navigate within our own lives. And as we navigate that, we pick up the tools for ourselves to have the courage to do the work that brings us back to ourselves. And then, a part of what we're working with in this post eclipse, like, so the eclipse season, right? We have that total eclipse on April 8th. That'll, do what it does, and we'll see what it does, and we'll see what happens. And I think the experience of the present moment for you is always the litmus test of what the reflection of the astrological wheel, what's turning in your own life, and what is being brought up right now, right? As Mercury moves in its retrograde back towards the sun. Here we go. We have Jupiter moving in its direct motion towards Uranus. We're moving towards something that is, did you see that? There's Mercury at 22 degrees. Aries making its cazimi with the sun. Cazimi means in the heart of, and it's essentially, there's two kinds of conjunctions that Mercury will make during its cycle. Mercury, being a personal planet, is always orbiting close with the sun, right? And during its retrograde, it makes an inferior conjunction. And during the midpoint of the cycle, in between retrogrades, it makes what we refer to as the superior conjunction. And that's when it's conjunct the sun, but in a direct motion. And, this retrograde motion is really bringing us back in towards, on a core level in the soul, like what fundamental limitations of our own personal perceptions of where we've been wounded and hurt and have reached a culmination in our relationships in particular, that is allowing us to step into a new idea, a new story, a new specific telling of our life experience and our healing journey in order to create the right new cycle, new seed. What was it I was talking about with the last quarter square? Last quarter is right. Following the disseminating phase, the soul has now entered into a stage of evolutionary development where a crisis of values and the meaning of life of those values begins to occur, right? The crisis within this phase is the need to keep operating within the framework of society, right? We have to keep living our life, doing our thing, right? But then we switch from that closing, that disseminating phase, that last quarter phase, into the new phase, right? Which is about this instinctual desire to learn how to be in relationships in a new way. And here we are with Mars in a new phase to Saturn. Here we are with the sun and in a new phase to the North Node and to Chiron. Here we are with the moon in a new phase to the sun, right? There's so much of our core evolutionary purpose from this point on, from Friday the 12th, right? Post eclipse season, but we're still within that window, right? And I would say because of Mercury's very close tie to this eclipse, that we won't actually feel like we're out of eclipse season until Mercury is direct and outside of its shadow, right? And that's not for, we'll go through the month of April. I'll show you how far we get, and it's not for a while, right? It's a trial and error kind of thing though, because on some level, like as we're moving towards this new phase and we want to be in this new perception and we have the courage, right? But courage doesn't require skills. Courage doesn't require skills. It only requires action. Action then taken repeatedly, right? That's what develops Saturn into skills, right? Courage is like the courage to say, oh, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this new thing. Courage is like, I'm going to break free. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to, it doesn't require our skill. It doesn't require us having any kind of mastery, in that new phase. It doesn't require us even feeling confident in it. In fact, there can be a bit of like emotional awkwardness to the place and to the phase that we're at, because it's like kind of, I think I told the story in the card that I picked yesterday, was like the ugly duckling, right? Comes to realize the true nature of itself and of how beautiful it is, how exquisite, and what an incredible creation it is. Like, you're coming to realize, right, all the stories you had about yourself from childhood and how limited you have been, you know, when you experience that loss, or you experience like being raised without that direct nourishment and reinforcement of, hey, man, I love you just as you are, who you are, right? Keep doing you. But then you come to realize in this phase of your life, my God, I'm this like beautiful, incredible, exquisite creature of creation. I've been created that way. And I just like have been mistaking myself this whole time to be this flawed and wounded and not good enough, you know, soul in the world. Identified with, in particular, how others have seen us in the past, right? Identified with the hurt that we've experienced from others, identified with the lack of masculine care, fatherly, paternal care, right? The lack of external validation towards the vulnerability and the beauty and the truth of who we are. Of course, when that happens, that we have to begin to disentangle ourselves from that narrative, right? There's going to be those awkward moments where we're still acting emotionally from the place that felt that way, but we know the truth, and we're just trying to come into congruence with really who we are. And as a part of that time, this time, I think one of the things that we can do to develop this, right, is one, to learn how to be emotional creatures and to walk in that emotionality without causing harm, right? To learn how to regulate our emotions. This has been one of my number one goals in this last year and a half or whatever. Learn how to regulate the emotional response, to be able to feel the feelings, to be able to feel the pain, right? Here's where Mercury, Monday the 15th, makes its conjunction to Chiron and crosses over in its retrograde, right? How do we feel what we're feeling emotionally? All the ties to the past patterns, past limitations, past pain, but not let it define, right? But rather let it build us into a space of creation. And then the moon, will move that week into the Pluto polarity point, which will be this 2 degrees Leo. And one of the things I'm starting to do this month, we're actually starting on that Friday. Go back to Friday for a second. My dear friend and colleague, Julianne Thompson, who is an amazing artist. She's a painter. She's been leading these serious containers for gregarious painting. I've had the benefit of being in her painting school for the last, I think almost 2 years. And it's been a super powerful process, one that has actually supported me in stepping into actualization as a painter and like really claiming that as a part of my own identity. Julianne and I are for the first time going to be offering an introduction to this container, and it's an invitation for painters and to come into a kinship circle really on a weekly basis. We're going to do a 4-week container, and we're starting on Friday, April 12th. Class will be at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Each week we'll tune into a particular emotional metaphysics theme around painting and the process of painting. If you're an artist and a painter and you've been doing this work on your own, to create and to be a creator, there is nothing more powerful than to step into a container of like-minded individuals who are doing their work and creating, and to share your process. So I totally invite you to join me. There's details on the event on my website, and the link is in this video to sign up to join Julianne and I. It's offered freely. Donations that you give will go to directly support this work and the art and the heart behind what Julianne is creating, which is one of the most valuable tools for reflection on the creative process that I've ever experienced. So I'm really grateful to be sharing this opportunity to join me and Julianne in that. It's something very new to me. And then, we go through, we're going to be doing one session a week for 4 weeks. So every Friday morning for the next 4 weeks from April 12th on until May 3rd. We go through in this month where we get into this first quarter trine, right? And Mercury is moving in its retrograde towards Venus. And I think this is where our power to refine and redefine our lives comes in, right? Virgo Pisces is that axis of discernment. And what we're discerning at this time in our life, especially as this new phase, this new moon opens up to a new phase, this new phase brings up the past for us to resolve, right? We're accelerating the soul's evolutionary process through this resolution process. What do we fix? What do we take out? What do we bring forward our courage with so that we can develop some kind of mastery in it, right? Because Saturn does ultimately say, whatever you give yourself to in devotion, whatever you repeat on a daily basis becomes the fabric of your being. Whatever you eat on a daily basis becomes your body. Whatever you pray on a daily basis becomes your thoughts. Whatever you think on a daily basis, whatever you feel on a daily basis, whatever you cultivate in your life with your life force energy, whatever you decide for yourself, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to feel. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to heal in my life, becomes then part of your soul's journey that then allows you to liberate from the past and step into just a whole new experience of life. And it might seem like we're waiting for these cathartic moments, right? Like eclipse season or the Jupiter Uranus conjunction. We're waiting for these big moments of realization, of evolution. And sometimes those moments can help us. Sometimes those moments can come. Sometimes those moments can take things away very quickly that we've been struggling to let go of. And that in and of itself can be a form of healing. And other times it's in the mundane reality of our personal journey, our personal struggle, the things that go unseen by most of the people in our lives, the things that we resolve within ourselves, those are the things that end up really truly liberating us. It's not necessarily that it happens all in a windfall, right? It's sort of like if you were to win the lottery and all of a sudden you become a millionaire, which is like so great. Maybe it's an answer to your prayers. Maybe you just have had, but on a deeper level, if you haven't done the work to recognize, well, what do I need to do to manage this kind of money? And how do I need to relate to this kind of resource? And having this kind of resource, like who do I need to have on my team to help me? Or what do I need to know? What do I need to be able to do in order to direct this kind of resource? And then most people haven't done that kind of work. And so then they feel, as soon as the money comes in, a sense of guilt to help the people who have helped them, or they feel like, and not to say that that's bad or wrong, or they go into a mode of spending, but they don't really recognize, like, hey, if you get $1 million and you spend it, you can spend it very quickly. And if you want to keep $1 million, there you have to learn how to really live off of a certain amount of money per month. And it's not actually that much money. Like most people need to retire with, according to some, some financial advisors, something around $3 million at least, I would say, on average in our current economic, in order to live off of that money and not have to work and not, right? Even though it might feel like, wow, I got this huge windfall, or maybe it's like a big change in our energy. We got this big, but in order to sustain that, we have to be able to do what? We have to be able to relate to it differently. We have to be able to relate to the past. And this, I think, will be one of the most interesting and yet challenging points in the month here, where we get to Venus conjunct Chiron, Moon in Libra. Moon in Libra moves opposite, crossing the South Node, right? I think this is kind of like one of those core resolution points. Jupiter crosses Uranus. We get that shift, right? And the moon is moving towards the full moon of this month, which is going to be Taurus, Scorpio, full moon axis. It's a part of the sort of, I think, bringing up those eclipses that we had last year that were activating that Taurus Scorpio axis. If you look at some of the videos that I did on the eclipses from last year, I talked about that axis at length, and you can watch or rewatch any of those. Those are on my channel. But in order for us to do that, we didn't then have to be able to figure out, like, okay, what's the thing that we're fixing that hasn't been working this whole time, that isn't dependent on anyone or anything else changing in order for it to be resolved. That's where the real power lies, right? We have all these signs. The Pluto polarity point is in Leo, right? Individual, creative self-expression. Sun, Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus, self care, self authority relative to our own physical, financial values, our own physical well-being. Aries, North Node, the I am, my own desire and will, right? The only thing that's commanding all of this, right, is kind of the divine hand behind all of this, which I think is really pointing us towards, hey, you thought healing looked this way. You thought it was taking you in this direction. But here I'm showing you that the direction of your own personal purpose, your own will, your own desires, that's the one that's going to take you where you're meant to go. And it may not feel like those we're wanting or the things that we're wanting are on board with this, right? Often in the breakdown, there's a breakthrough, but in the breakdown, we have to lose something. Something has to stop working in order for us to have and move towards the resolution. And then there we go at the end of the month, Mercury stations direct. And it's stations direct basically with the North Node. Venus at the end of Aries, still Mars in Pisces. And as we look, what happens these last couple of days, right? We move from the full moon at the end of the month, we move towards this moon in a square to Mars and Saturn, right? So some formal way in which our belief systems, right, our beliefs about the world and our natural impulses, our intuitive impulses are now grounded in a new particular way and space and belief and idea about life itself. And then here we go into the return of that Capricorn moon. But this, from where we began at the beginning of the month with that Capricorn moon to where we end at the end of the month with the Capricorn moon, right? We're now moving towards a trine. The sun in Taurus trine the moon in Capricorn. And then even within that day, Venus enters Taurus. And we get the ground of maybe some relief that we're able to have really embodied the acceleration of that change that was necessary for us to finally culminate those unconscious desires and bring the true conscious desires, or bringing our true perception into form. And then we have, this last day of the month here before the 1st of May, where Mars enters Aries. So Mars is now in its sign and Venus is in her sign. And the moon is back in Aquarius with Pluto, right? So I think this reflects the total power of the transmutation of the month ahead. And I'll pick a card for the month ahead because I've been thinking a lot about this whole idea of illusion. And interestingly enough, we got the illusion. Again, this is from Kara Elizabeth's Animal Apothecary deck. And it's card number 13. In this card, we see a harpoon searching the sea for a dangerous shark that only appears in your mind's eye, right? This is the illusion that I was talking about. You've tricked yourself. Your current fear or worry or insecurity is all an illusion. I would say even maybe your current belief, the current belief that is creating the most suffering in your life, could be identified as just an illusion. You've tricked yourself into hunting for a thing that doesn't even exist. By putting so much attention and effort into combating or avoiding what you are afraid of, you are simultaneously engaging and fueling it. Most fears quite literally exist only in our minds. When you feel small, insecure, or controlled by fear, this is not your true self. This is your programmed self ruled by the limbic system, ego, past traumas, and false marketing that always shames us into not feeling good enough. This illusion will tell you that you are not worthy and make you feel scared, keep you with someone who treats you poorly, and make you feel the need to compete with and be better than others. The challenge lies in how powerful this illusion appears. It colors every aspect of your reality like a cloud of thick gray smoke. While you are cannot always avoid being caught in the smoke, you can recognize when you're in it. And this is probably the most important part of seeing clearly, right? I was talking about this. We're working towards seeing clearly. And a part of what we're doing in coming back to reality, and AKA the truth of who we are, is clearing these illusions. You must first understand that you are in an illusion before you can escape it. Right now, Shark's medicine is for you to understand whatever is currently brings you fear is not actually the truth. You are safe and everything is going to work out. Do not make big decisions when the gray smoke is visiting. Soon you will see it clearly. And I would say, yeah, to the extent that people often say, don't make decisions during Mercury retrograde or whatever. We're going to make the choices we need to make in order to resolve the distress in our life. But I think when we realize the power and we recognize the power we have to create in our life, and we're creating with that mind tool, and the power we have to evolve then becomes through reclaiming that mind tool, liberating ourselves from the stuck pattern of pain or disillusionment, right? And coming back into the truth of our wholeness, coming back into the truth that we are safe, that we are loved, that we are good enough. And as we do that this month, as we endeavor to do that, as just remembering that, we're all doing the best that we can. We are really trying to recover who we are, to return to our source. And if something is triggering us, if something is bringing up places that are unhealed, it is for our good. It is for our benefit. And with all this culmination energy, and especially in this earlier part of the month, we can really start to take root into things that are about our long-term evolution, our long-term creative potential starts to get unleashed. And instead of banking on potential that we're not acting on, we start acting on truth inside of us and clearing the misperceptions of ourselves and really getting to come into feeling and healing and being resourced in ways that we've never experienced before. So that's my prayers for you, my friends. I hope that these messages helped. If there's something in this month ahead that really touched you, please share it in the comments below. Let me know how you're doing out there. Join me if you're a painter in practice, and Julianne in our 4-week process. This will be a great way to ground through this time. I'll also be teaching the goddess within this month on Ceres, the mother goddess. So it's not too late to join me for that class series. If you would like to join, you can watch the replay of last month, which was Hygeia, the goddess of health and healing. And this month we'll be tuning into Ceres, the mother goddess. And as always, my friends, be well out there. May you be surrounded in love and come to know yourself as the truth that you are. So sending you my love for now. Bye for now, my friends.